Hi Sven. So I'm very excited about that video today. So ad fraud is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. I heard that Uber, for example, estimate that they lost $200 million to fraudster. I've seen some estimation that we're talking about 30 to 60 billion dollar losses every year. I don't know if you have more precise information than that, but so we're going to deep dive today in something very exciting because you showed us how easy it is to create a bot to gain revenue from it, and then we're obviously going to talk what advertisers can do to improve the control of it.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much, Charlie, for having me. Yeah, I absolutely agree with these numbers. That's also what we see on our end. The losses are often really huge once they come out. So, and as you mentioned, like people need to know how easy it is actually to really create a malicious clickbot these days using AI tools, and and that's why they need to be aware of this. When they actually look at their data and how easily things can be spoofed and manipulated.
Wow. So let's I saw the first version. We're going to see the second version together. The first one was mind-blowing. So let's deep dive into this.
That how fraudsters are committing fraud on your cost per click offers, or how they are going to use different IP addresses to simulate signups on your lead forms. Well, then stay tuned, because now we are going to build a malicious clickbot simulating different devices, simulating different locations of IPs and ISPs. I'm going to use ChatGPT to build the whole thing for us with zero coding experience. We're going to do the whole thing in under 15 minutes. So stay tuned and let's get started. So on the left-hand side, we're going to see our platform, and we're going to need to pull a tracking link. And we have prepared this little tracking link. So it's an offer, auto CPC, yeah, and it goes to the auto landing page. When I click it, what happens? I get to this page, all fine, everything normal. Now, so in order to do this, we're going to use ChatGPT to help us with this, and we're going to paste our little prompt in here, and we're going to tell it, okay, use Python. We have a specific URL. We want to randomize user agents. We want to randomize browser languages. We want to see some mobile devices, some desktop devices. Give it a bit of randomness here, yeah. And we also give it the URL, use this URL. So yeah, it's pretty simple. We're going to use the new model called ChatGPT o3 Mini. This one is particularly good with coding. And let's see what it does.
So I just want to really stop here very quickly. So you showed us an ad that is on the market, and so everything that we have after the question mark is the query string, and so you will be able to hit that query string and create traffic for that query string, and then you're going to be able to claim revenue.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's how every normal tracking link would look like. Yeah, you send data there, and now we're gonna simulate sending fake user agents, fake browser languages to this tracking link, and then we're gonna look at the statistics and see what we see. So it starts its reasoning. Yeah, so this will take a few seconds. And yeah, it's thinking about this. And yes, it did it. So it told us to install this request.js. We've already done this. So, but then if you look at the code here, very interesting. Okay, so we have a number of different user agents. So we're going to have an Android 11, we have an iPhone, an Android 9, a Windows machine, an Intel Mac, and a Linux machine, and as well like some different languages: American English, German, French, and Spanish. And here is the click URL, and
Yeah, and it's gonna make a little output here as well, and it's gonna makes 10 requests like this. We're gonna increase it like 25 later on. So we're gonna copy this over, put it into our IDE. So we're gonna head over here. For this demo, I'm using cursor, but you can use anything else like that, of course. And I just copy pasted it in. I didn't do anything else. I'm just gonna say, okay, we want to have a few more clicks maybe. So we're gonna put it to 25. And what is actually impressive is ChatGPT already gave us very nice commenting on the lines. So it really tells us everything, how to read the script, even if you're not a programmer. It's super easy and simple to do. And yeah, so the next thing is what we'll do is we're gonna hit play and we're gonna watch what happens. And yeah, it's amazing. As you can see, it's already starting to generate some clicks here. So it's doing it every second or so. It does that, and as you can see, it's using a different version. So version 14, the Samsung browser. We have a Chrome here. Here's the Firefox, yeah, and so on. So it keeps doing this. And so now we want to actually see that in our stats. So let's head over to this one, see what's coming in. So, so this is some data from before, but now, okay, so our offer is called A and the publisher is called 1, right? Just a very simple here. And what it tells us, okay, we are not using a proxy, but we can see device, phone, computer, and so on. I'm gonna get a little bit more, gonna be a bit more interesting to see what else we can see. We want to see the user age, we want to see the browser language. So let's get all this data. And yeah, we can see we have the city, Dresden. It's always pure. This is my home internet here. And well, we also have the IP address. So it's always the same IP address. But we already have different devices here, right? So that's very nice. I have a different browser languages here. So all that already looks very organic. And if we go back to here, and we're going to look a little bit more into our statistics. So if we want to see that, what's my device overview? It's, yeah, so this is how it comes out because it randomizes the whole thing. And it's going to give us quite an organic distribution of this. But
that is insane because, I mean, the IP is the same, and we'll cover this later, but already at this stage, that means that if you use device, user ID, all the variables that you have read, countries also, if language, you can't find bots just by using those because it's very easy to randomize.
Yeah, it is. So we really cannot always trust this data. Of course, we can, as you can see, so easy to simulate an organic distribution from this. And it's actually just like a parameter basically that's being sent to the web server, to the tracking platform, and tell us, okay, I'm an Android device, I'm an iPhone device, right? It's as simple as that. They call it headers, but what it is in practice is like a parameter, a data point that you pass there and say, hey, that's what I am. And now, you know, that's what it is. I'm a Spanish user, I'm a German user. Very easy to simulate. And as you see, like no coding experience at all, right?
No.
If someone was digging into the data, they would still be able to find it because we get all the clicks from a single IP, right? So that's still pretty easy to detect if you know how to do it. And of course, now we could use a VPN, but many blacklists, and you could still know, okay, this is an Amazon ISP. You can still, this is coming from a DigitalOcean server or something like that. Then you kind of still know, okay, that those clicks can't be real, right? So what are fraudsters doing to get around this problem? And they have discovered something called residential proxies. And they've been on the market now for a couple of years. And basically what they do,
is they offer home internet IPs to people that want to get around these kind of detections. And it's typically used for search engine purposes, ad verifications, if you want to see how's your ad looking on this specific page in another country, and you basically don't want to get detected. Yeah. But of course, the use case is fraud, of course, as well. And so a lot of fraudsters are using these services to get around it. And there's no, on a normal usage, there's no legitimate use to use that, because these things are pretty expensive, as you can see, $8 per gigabyte. If I want to hide my identity, I would never use a residential proxy, because I can just use a VPN that is unmetered. I can download, I can use it as much as I want. So let's go back to that. So we know we want to use something like Oxy Labs to obfuscate our IP address. So the next thing to do, we're going to use, we have to use a proxy. And so now we're going to instruct ChatGPT to say, okay, so that's nice, that's working, amazing. Now I want you to use this proxy for each request. And I have already done this. I have invalidated the user credentials, so they're not going to work anymore. But for this purpose, we can run this. So now I'm going to hit enter. And let's see what happens. Okay, so it did something here. Let's copy it over to our code editor and let's look at the code. So, okay, so we have the same thing that we had before with the user agents. We have the languages as well. This is the click URL that we have, but this you simply have to change that with the whatever you want to use. And here is my, so it added here proxy configuration, the URL, and it's going to use it for HTTP and HTTPS. So yeah, so looks pretty simple. So let's get this done, and let's see how this performs when I press play. Let's see what happens here. So I'm gonna play this again. And I wonder if anything happens. No. Oh, it only makes one request. Does it anymore? No. No. It actually does multiple requests, but it takes a bit longer. That's probably because of the proxy. And what we want to do now, we want to check into our stats what we see here, how these IPs are coming in, right? So the next thing is, okay, should be getting, yeah. So the next thing here, we are getting now IPs from Germany. We're simulating different users from different locations in Germany and different ISPs. So it's going to rotate that on each and every request. So I'll get a bit more than that. Give me 25. Continue doing this. So we're going to have different IPs. We have different cities. And now we have a Vodafone. We have something in Berlin, Frankfurt, Munich, Leipzig. Yeah. O2, Pure, and so on, right? It already starts looking really, really organic. And the devices are simulated as well. And now when we start looking into our statistics, and we want to see a little bit more what's going on. So now we can start seeing that these IPs, so this was my home IP, so that's why we have so many. But if we look at the other ones, they're all unique, right? And they keep coming in. And if I look at the ISP distribution, we'll also say everything looks normal. We have a Vodafone an O2. Yeah, these are all regular ISPs here in Germany. So everything looks normal on this end. Of course, with bigger numbers, this cake would shrink, yeah, because it belongs to my IP that we simulated IP clicks from before. But now if we go back to this one, they actually getting also rejected in our system because these are, we flagged them as masked IPs. So if you look at if we go and look into the advanced reasoning here, we're going to see residential proxy, right? But from a normal perspective, from a normal naked eye view, you would not be able to tell this. Yeah, so it's a Deutsche Telekom. This should normally not be flagged as a proxy.
So how are you capable to see that it's a residential proxy on your side?
So we developed specific algorithms to do this. So one thing that we're doing is we're monitoring the dark web. So we have scanners deployed, like honeypots, where fraudsters are actively connecting to these proxy servers that we deployed, and we are able to record all these IP addresses there, and we see that obviously this IP is being used actively as a proxy, even though they're from a telecom or Vodafone. Yeah, so we basically honeypotted them all, and that's how we're able to determine it.
But because they're residential proxies, so we're able to flag them here. So I hope this was helpful and you got a little bit of insight how easy it is to do. And if you want me to send you the code, I'm very happy to do so, or you can just replicate this yourself at home. It's unfortunately how incredibly easy it is for fraudsters today to do this. And we see this type of fraud with many networks, many advertiser experiences. We see it as on ad exchanges at the massive scales. We see it on connected TV. We see it on lead generation forms. We even see it to a certain extent on Google Ads, especially on the display campaigns or PMAX. We see quite a bit of fraud there. So definitely be aware of what's going on. And I hope you found this useful. Thank you so much.
Well, that was mind-blowing, wasn't it? I mean, for me, it was. So many questions now, and I think a lot of other people are going to have questions about it. So first, the thing I want to underline is that was a simple one, right? Because that was just traffic, but you can have a bot that is doing multiple page on the website to fake an engagement session. So that means that the concept of engage session on GA is not a sufficient way. I guess it will filter a few bots, but it's not going to be like a robust way of filtering bots traffic. It can time on session. We talk about this in another call. It's not a good way also to filter bots because you can ask your bot to stay on the website how much you want. And actually, I have noticed that on a display campaign, a lot of add to cart traffic and all the session were like quite high. The session time was very high, but actually it was bot traffic. And yeah, that's what is great also is that happy to share the code to tell people how to start their ad fraud business, but on the wrong side. But what is great is that you showed that actually with just ChatGPT, you can very easily start a mini fraudulent business on the ad fraud. And I want to jump on a few key things that you mentioned at the end. Is you said because one thing I mentioned is that we think that some big vendors, because they're big vendors, they are big names, we are more protected to it, but actually it's not the case. And even where you wouldn't expect ad fraud there are, right? You mentioned PMAX, for example. You mentioned the lead generation. So that's one question that I think a lot of the audience will be interested who are spending ads on LinkedIn. Do you see any traffic, fraudulent traffic on LinkedIn lead gen ad?
To be honest, we're not really monitoring a lot of things on LinkedIn. Yeah. So it could be, but I think in general, if that is specific, they don't have this. If it's really coming from the LinkedIn side, then I believe it's going to be a lot less. If it's really from LinkedIn, uh, but if it's going through any like a display network, then I believe it's the same thing on as a Google Ads, right? Google Display, or if there's a LinkedIn Ads network, then I believe it's the same thing.
And retargeting. Buyers believe that when they use retargeting campaigns, they're retargeting
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
specific people.
yeah.
Is that true or not?
Of course, I mean, retargeting works is in e-commerce. Yeah, we all know that. It comes along with all this data privacy problems, but besides that, from a performance metric, yes, it does work. But of course, and I think the tricky part with fraud is that a lot of the numbers are inflated. So what can be a part of my traffic is real, right? A part of the traffic is good. And you might say, let's assume you have 80% good traffic, but 20% of it is fraud. Yeah. So that means you're also getting real buyers, you're getting real KPIs, you're getting a lot of real stuff here that you say, well, I'm getting buyers here. It can't be fraud. But what a lot of the stuff is actually today is getting rebrokered, mixed in, numbers are being inflated, right? And then people have a hard time to distinguish, like, this is the one source that's 100% fraud and the other one is 0% fraud, right? That's in reality, that's the tricky part. That is, we don't have this black and white. A lot of the stuff are getting mixed in, making it kind of difficult to see it with this black and white mentality.
And so that's very interesting because, for example, we do see campaigns not performing well but still driving revenue, and we look into diminishing returns, we look into like different level like of spend, like trying to understand what is the optimum pump. But actually one of the message here is that we can also drastically improve the performance of a campaign if we start to look into ad fraud.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the first and the most important thing is to create this type of awareness. Like the video that we're doing now is just to illustrate people how easy it is to do that with ChatGPT, and we just did it in 15 minutes. Yeah, imagine how much better you can make a bot if you spend days on it. You could simulate daytime differences. You can say that the clicks not coming every 2 seconds. You can say, okay, I want it between random between 1 and 15 seconds, right? So you give it a more organic feel on it. So you can do all these things. You could improve a bot there. Imagine what can be done with a few more prompts if someone puts in more work into this. Yeah. So the first thing is to understand that is fraud is real. Understand how it's being done, and then say, okay, apparently we're getting hit big. We need to take action on it. And we need to say, okay, by assuming only we're looking at the source alone and say we're having some sort of retention metrics here. So it cannot be fraud. That's maybe one of the number one reasons often fraudsters get away with it, right? Because there are some retention metrics. And as a fraudster, you try to from a logical perspective, they're trying to spread their traffic through as many sources as possible because they don't care about getting a lower payout. They will just increase the volume, right? They're gonna make up the lower payout they get by sending it to another network and not having this direct connection. They simply send more traffic, and they do this with multiple networks, multiple partners, and maybe one partner gets shut down. They don't get paid. Yeah, but that's all in the calculation. It's all the probability. They say, I don't know, in 80% of the time, I'm getting paid. The 20% where I'm not getting paid, well, that's just part of the business, right? So from their perspective, spreading it through as many sources as they can has a huge advantage. If you're running small numbers, then you typically fly underneath the radar. If you generate, I don't know, you generate around 5,000 euros a day, you can bet for sure that advertisers are going to look more carefully into that traffic. But if you run, I don't know, you run some sub-IDs and they're constantly changing, and and you can also randomize sub-IDs, of course, right? Sub-IDs are not a genuine source of truth that are absolutely unique. They can be just generated. So it doesn't mean you cannot really filter out and say, now I'm getting all this traffic, I'm filtering out the bad sources and I only keep the good ones. That's what people in media buy think. And I used to be a media buyer myself. That's exactly what I did 12 years ago. Then when we've been buying media, we were hoping to filter out only the good sources and then scale that up. Yeah.
And that doesn't work all the time. I guess on connected TV, where you can talk to the connected TV, maybe it's a bit more robust selecting your vendors than display, where there is that massive.
Yes and no. I mean, again, of course, it always depends on the source. If you have something that is where you absolutely know where the traffic is coming from and you trust that source, I still believe numbers can still be inflated. Yeah, because we all know that sometimes companies, owners, founders, they can be under pressure from investors to deliver high numbers, right? And sometimes they might say, okay, well, I have no other choice. And they may just inflate their own numbers by 10, 20%. And if they're using techniques like that, they're quite likely to get away with it. And nobody's really able to prove them otherwise because nobody knows about this fraud, right? Who is doing it, who is committing it. They say this is our own traffic. The employees on the team even don't know that, right? If this is very high up in the ranks, then the sales rep wouldn't know about this. They don't understand that. And they say, oh, this can't be fraud, it's all our own traffic, you know. And that's it's an incredible complicated, intertwined system, yeah, that we have in reality.
And what can a head of marketing or CFO do to make sure that we spend less on those fraudulent? My understanding is that you won't be able to completely get rid of it, but what can you do to prevent a big part of it?
Yeah, I think that the first part and I think the most important is the mindset. Yeah, say fraud is out there. We're not going to be able to 100% eliminate it. Yeah, it's just part of doing online marketing. It's always been there. It will continue being there, but it's a way how we deal with it. I think that's the first part, the mindset, you know. Second, implement KPIs as much as you can, because the more KPIs you have, the more metrics can analyze, like what is the registration, the level 5, reaching level 5 on a mobile app to install, and how many of these percentage people buy, and so on. They can already reveal you some things when things are off, because these can be internal metrics that only you know and your team knows. And you might say 12% of my users actually only reach level 5. But the fraudster might think, it should be 50%, you know? So they can simulate these activities, but they don't know the exact KPI levels. And I know it's around 12% is actually lower than what a lot of people might think it is. And a fraudster would then assume, okay, if I'm having 50% engagement, probably a good metric, but it's a big outlier, right? So when you have these metrics, look at them very carefully. And when they are too good to be true, in all my years of experience, in 99% of the cases, it is too good to be true, right? If things don't add up, it's a huge red flag. And then you should really look into this. So that's one thing. Next thing, try to educate yourself a little bit more about fraud. Take that, you know, what kind of fraud tactics are out there that happen on your type of campaigns. Like lead gen is different from mobile apps, right? And if you look at impression campaigns, they have different problems and so on. So really try to educate yourself a little bit on this, and try to have raw logs of the data. If you don't have any access to the data, if you don't have access to the raw data, you're not going to be able to analyze this. If you only look at the KPIs and look at it on a bird's eye overview dashboard, this is where you can miss a lot of the data. So I think that's very important. Every organization should have access to the raw data. Analyze it, look into it, right? And then already filter out some very obvious fraud. That's maybe to start with, right? Say, we have fraud. it is a problem, but let's define some rules where we say as a company is absolutely fraud. I mean, let's say a duplicate IP on a lead gen form within, let's say, within 3 hours, right? How likely is it that actually it's a different user having having the same IP address running the same campaign? How likely is this? Now, if you look at the US, I always tell that to clients, we have 1.5 billion IPs, the US alone. 1.5 billion, about 300 million people living in the States. So, of course, some of them belong to server centers and other things, the military and other things. But there are quite a few unique IPs in the United States, right? The chance that someone from the same IP within, let's say, 24 hours is making multiple registrations with the same IP is extremely slim. Yeah. Of course, cannot be 100% excluded, but you can do the math, and you probably find a sandcorn easier on the beach than a true collision. You know.
I saw in the raw data, I also saw the referrer website. A lot of gaming, online gaming website. Are there any really humans going on those websites? Like, is it like a red flag as a whole? Like to see traffic coming from those websites?
You mean the gaming websites? You mean like
Yeah, so gaming.me, gamingonline.me, to have a lot of different like website names, and I do see a lot of traffic from digital display coming from those kind of websites.
Yeah, I mean that is very questionable, to be fair. Yeah, I used to work in media also for games company, and we used to buy from exactly this type of sites. We got a lot of traffic there. Quality was overall always very low. Uh, I would not necessarily say that it's always fraud, but I would also look at the SEO ranks, right? One of the things, look at how old is a domain. Look at what is the SEO ranking. Yeah. If they have no ranking and they're sending a lot of traffic, it's a huge red flag, you know. Uh, it's just not happening, you know. And and as you can see, referrals, by the way, can be faked as easily as we just did in the video, faking user agents and browser languages. You can just say, I'm sending you traffic from the nicest site, and you have it all in the stats. Because it's the browser actually telling the web server, telling the tracking platform where it came from. And that's just something that we can manipulate. And that is a manipulated parameter, right? And we're just sending them a fake site. And in all their stats, it will appear, wow, look, we're on this super cool site. But that is not a guarantee that this is the case, you know? So even if I went out and bought super expensive traffic on that site, and I'm not spending a lot of money on there, and I'm saying that the rest of the stuff is fraud, well, then I can mix it in a way and say, look, I'm buying it from this very nice site. Because I'm buying such huge quantities, I'm getting a discount or whatever, right? I can pretend doing that, and the rest actually, where the real traffic is coming, is my bot. Yeah.
So that means, for example, I'm the New York Times, so I'm working hard to have a lot of traffic and high quality traffic on my website.
Yeah.
And then a fraudster can just claim traffic from my website and get paid for it.
It is possible. I mean, there are things like ads.txt that can help you preventing that. There are ad exchanges. Yeah. That's why they have these things. But many affiliate platforms, they're not using ads.txt. Yeah. So that's not typically, in many ways, it's often not used. And then absolutely, yeah, they can definitely say that they are sending you traffic from the New York Times.
So I did see also that there are like lazy fraudster who are not even hiding. Like on the user agent, you see Jupyter script. They're not Python script. They're not even hiding.
Yeah.
And then you have the clever one. So there is some guidelines that you can use to at least get rid of the lazy ones. As you spec time of the days, number of session within an hour, duplicated IP, referrers.
Yes.
All of those can help you to filter a good part of it. But then what we see is that they complexify over time, right? The lazy ones are going to disappear, and then we're going to have more and more complex one. And then the only way to pick those complex ones is to use things like you do. So you go on the you go on the dark web and you try to find the residential proxies. Foo Analytics, for example, is looking at the behavior on the session to try to see if the traffic is bot or not.
Yeah.
In is it fair to say that, I mean, we have to move forward, and having an ad fraud tool, it should be part of a tech stack today in marketing?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I think whatever you use as a provider, you have to understand that, for example, proxies, residential proxies are extremely common these days. Yeah. They used to be VPNs. The business used to be in the VPN traffic data center using that, but now they have all moved to residential proxies to do that. So that it's going to be very difficult to determine that on your own, to be fair. You can, of course, look at your metrics. You should know your metrics inside out and say, this is the kind of range. What is my conversion rate? Yeah, I'm buying this type of traffic. My conversion rate is typically between this and that. I have a big outlier, either on the low side or on the high side. It's a red flag, right? Next thing is the KPIs, right? The retention metrics. Look at them. If they're too high, too low, also red flag, right? So try to identify trusted sources where you kind of really know the traffic and say, this is how they behave, and take them as a benchmark. Yeah. And of course, you have to then see, try to really work with your partners and also make them understand you're losing a lot of money. You're losing so much money. You could actually say, what if I say duplicate IPs that come in within a time frame, let's say 6 hours or 12 hours or whatever, I consider that cannot be a false positive, right? And even if it were 1 in a million false positive, even if it was the case, right? Would I not want to stop the other type of fraud at the cost of a single teeny tiny false positive? Right? I mean, if you were a shop owner and you see this kind of guys coming in, stealing every day from you, and they do that in 99% of the cases, and one day there's a guy comes in and he buys a chocolate bar. Well, I think the risk, you would also, as a shop owner, would say, well, I'm sorry, I'm not selling to you. I don't let you into my store because the risk is too high that you will not steal some. Yeah. I think we have to approach it like that. And in return, what we can do is we can actually raise the prices. Because if you say, if we don't pay a commission for each and everything, we say that's invalid. Yeah. That is clearly a bot, a proxy, a duplicate IP, a sign up to a lead form in 10 seconds. Yeah. Or it takes a minute. Yeah. Obviously, it's very garbage. I mean, how can you sign up in 10 seconds, right? Filling out a multi-page form. Now, if we don't pay for this stuff, then we can also increase the payout to the real stuff, make ourselves more competitive in the market, getting more real traffic while we're putting sand into the system of the fraudster. And that's basically the only thing that helps. You need to put sand into the system. So they're gonna guess, okay, it's really difficult to get paid here. It's too tedious to work. They might get a little bit fraud in, a few euros, but they say, okay, I'm not really getting anywhere, and they're gonna move on. And you have to keep doing this. This is basically the only thing that you can do, because they're gonna keep coming back. They're gonna go to the other partner, to another network. You shut them down here. They made a couple of €1,000. Why should they stop? They already built and developed their bot that works on your lead form.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. And another thing is also very important because we see a lot of this kind of things on. We even saw like duplicate IPs. I had a discussion just a few weeks ago with a large DSP, and they said okay, they claimed, how can it be fraud? Like a duplicate IP, they have machine learning algorithm on their impressions, how they buy traffic. But we say, okay, we see a lot of duplicate IPs from you. So, I mean, very short time, like even within 2 minutes, right? And they say, well, how can it be fraud? Because we're we are buying on CPM basis, right? Our machine learning system is not affiliate traffic. We have a machine learning system. What it turned out to be was that the fraudster, he has a site, he's sending traffic there, and then he's manually over the bot making signups to the app or to the form, telling the machine learning system this is a good site, and in return, the algorithm will buy more traffic on a CPM basis from his site. So it's not directly connected, but they're tricking into the algorithms. They're tricking the algorithms to believe this is a good thing. And the algorithms today, in almost any DSP, they are not considering fraud in making their decision.
There is that often, and I've seen it, that's in the financial industry on the security side, that weird belief that the bad guys are less clever than the good guys. And when there's money to be made, like, you're going to have a lot of clever people who are going to figure out how to play the game.
Yeah.
How is the fraud? Like, how? I mean, Uber mentioned a crazy number, $200 million wasted on fraudsters. So, and I suspect the marketing budget is not $1 billion a year. So it was quite a significant portion of their marketing spend. So how big is the size of the, like, I think a lot of people would like to understand, of my 100% I spend on marketing, how much is just given away to fraudsters?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we estimated around 25% easily. We see sources up to some. We had seen a net where had like 80% or 90% fraud, and they didn't know it themselves. Yeah, so they were like, okay, now we have a problem. Like they actually start using us, and then they realized, like, oh no, all their business is actually fraud, right? But not knowing, they knew that they had a fraud problem, but they didn't know it was so big. Yeah, so I think it's fair to say, if you ask various sources, that 25% is definitely a very solid number. There's a good chance that in some areas like mobile, they are particularly prone to fraud. There are some things are more prone to fraud than others. If you have like a small brand, then maybe you are less prone to fraud than if you have something like an Amazon. They are more likely to, or Uber, right? Cookie dropping, click spamming. I think Uber, they had the click spam problem. So we call this attribution fraud, that you're getting real users, but they actually have not come from the affiliate. They just triggered a fake click with a device ID or a cookie ID or something, and later on the user would install it, and then the attribution system will wrongly attribute it to the fraudster. And because they're real users, they also buy, they shop, they have KPIs, everything looks normal.
Well, that was a great chat. I think I'm surprised, given the size of that. I'm surprised that it's not really a common subject on online or across marketers. We all talk about optimization, ad copy, attribution, measurement. Nobody talks about fraud, and that's like a massive elephant in the room.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is the main problem, right? That's maybe the problem that we need to solve as the industry. We need to start talking about it more openly. A lot of people say, like, besides the obvious culprits right here, there are a lot of people that are innocent that actually are not aware. They want to do a lot of campaigns, a lot of networks, a lot of agencies. They want to grow the business, not based on fraud. They want reliable, constant growing the business. But on the outside, nobody really wants to be involved with fraud, because the agencies, they of course they want to be clean. They only send the best traffic. Yeah. The networks, of course, them as well. The publisher always innocent. Yeah. And but also the advertisers. Sometimes they say, okay, their bonuses are tied to revenues, right? The CEO might need to get another funding round, right? They need to grow their businesses and say, okay, if we need to hit this next funding round, we need X million of new users. And now I'm not going to go out and say, buy me some fraud, but I'm going to close all eyes and say, okay, I know it's going to be very, very terrible quality, but I need to show numbers. And since we have this kind of incentive model in the industry that so much is actually based on revenue, on short-term revenue instead of long-term success, this backfires on us, right? This model is backfiring on us. Because also, I believe Uber, they could have also maybe figured that out earlier before losing $200 million, because very likely they had very low conversion rates, I believe. They must have had very low CTITs. So there must have been very likely to be some big warning signs. But I could imagine they have been just ignored, right? In the belief there is some good revenue and so on. And this, I think this is one of the problems that we face today. That people are incentivized by revenue. Yeah?
That is the maximization problem, right? If you want more of your KPI given the number of dollars, you're going to maximize it. You're going to target more lower quality things. It's the same with Google. When you target clicks, you're just going to have all the low quality clicks, and then it's not going to convert. It's the problem when you give a team a budget and then say, well, you need to reach that specific KPI, that specific download, and then you fall into the trap of, oh, we found the way, and then in the end you figured out that it was just like fake traffic.
And that's also the problem, like you mentioned, like you're an affiliate manager or in sales, right? And you just started your job. And maybe, okay, they tell you, like, find some traffic sources, right? I mean, I've been in that position myself. And you say, okay, well, if you go out and say, okay, this guy looks a bit shady, and that's maybe a network from this country, I don't know if they're bad, and this guy, he looks a bit funny, you know, I don't like his LinkedIn post. Then at the end of the day, you're gonna say we can't work with anybody. Yeah. You know, and with that approach and that attitude, you're gonna get fired. You know, that's what's gonna happen. You're gonna be out of a job in 6 months. Say everybody's bad. We can't work with anybody. Then the boss will say, okay, well then we can shut down affiliate marketing, right? And that's not always a solution. That doesn't work. So I think the only way is we have to learn how to deal with it. We need to think about how do we automate it? How do we get everybody on the same page? Because technically, if you wanted it, affiliate fraud or fraud in general could be solved. Technically, it can be solved. Because if the advertiser said, I have a system in place, I'm screening, these are my fraud rules, and they're not negotiable. We believe that this is fraud or shouldn't be paid. Duplicate users should not be paid, invalid user or fraud. You're not getting paid for that. We automatic deducting it, connecting it to our tracking system. We're automatically deducting it. We're sharing the transparency with the partners on that. Now, whether people like it or not, it doesn't actually matter. It should come from the advertiser saying, this is what I believe is fraud. We've done our data research and so on. So that's why it is. We're not going to pay for it. If you don't like it and you say, okay, that's not right, you should be paid for that, then you simply can argue with them, but you can ultimately you should just go somewhere else, right? They're going to lose good affiliates promoting their competitors. It's as simple as that, right? But I think this revolution or this change needs to come from the advertiser side. It cannot come from the agencies. It cannot come from the networks. As long as they are going to pay for it, there will never be any change. There was always going to be, at the end of the month, the endless discussion about should it be paid, should not be paid, even if it's only like 2% that is fraud. We should not pay for that because it's going to grow. The 2% going to go to 5%, the 5% going to go to 10%, it's going to go to 20%. You know, if you don't cut it right there at the 2%, it's like a bad tooth, right? You don't let it rot, you know. We need to automate it. We need to say, this is automated. We need to add transparency in the market. And people need to start taking it seriously and say, well, we could afford a lot more media if we actually bought real media and spent that money here. And we need to take this, people need to educate themselves more on fraud cases, take it seriously, look at the metrics, and then automate it. Yeah, if you automate it, then you get some headaches away. And if you're very confident on these things that you're automatically rejecting, like a duplicate IP, let's say, in 6 hours, if that's what you believe, it should be, and you did your math on the probability in this, and you say, okay, well, I'm taking that risk, but 6 hours sounds very solid to me. Then that's where you're gonna cut and draw the line. End of story. Whoever doesn't like it should go somewhere else, promote something else. Yeah, simple as that, right? So that fear has to be, we need a different model, a different incentive model in the industry that is not purely based on revenue. It needs to be somehow based also on scale, on long-term results, right? So fraud is a very complex problem. Yeah, it's more of a human problem than it is of a technical problem.
Yeah, because there's an incentive to close your eyes. That was an amazing chat. Thank you so much for your time today, and I hope everybody's going to find that interesting.
Thank you, Charlie.
Bye.